Okay, we are going to, Carol, we're going to give a little review for Carol's sake.
Thanks, guys.
But we just started Revelation again last week. Carol, we've been talking about, well, maybe you guys can share a little bit about what you've learned.
I haven't been.
You haven't been paying attention?
I've been listening to other people.
Well, what have you learned from Shabbat? We've been studying this for over a month now.
What have we learned?
Yeah, what have you
We've
guys
learned
learned?
who it's addressed to.
Who's it addressed
and who
to?
is speaking, and
The seven churches.
The seven churches. So the book of Revelation. So we turn to chapter 1. It's addressed to the seven churches. And who is speaking?
John.
John.
But we are not sure which John.
There could be, there's two Johns. I know you can't
So
see
it could
me.
be Lazarus John, right?
Yeah.
Or it could be John the disciple.
Did you hear her?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So Lazarus is also John Eleazar. So we're thinking it could be him because he wrote John, the book of John, and 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, and Revelation so different from the other Johns.
So because
from the other disciples, from the other. I know I'm nervous
because the other writings are different than Revelations, you're thinking that it's John the Lazarus, or
Yeah, Eleazar, because he's the one that rose from the grave. He's the one that got resurrected, and he knows. I mean, the writing is so different from the other Gospels.
so that when the writing's different, that kind of leads to it not being John the disciple.
I'm wondering. Yeah, he is a disciple, but not one of the 12.
It's another.
Yeah, and he had an experience that was powerful.
That he had a very personal relationship with Yahushua.
Yeah, he was the beloved, the one whom Yahushua loved.
It's not a book.
Yeah.
Which John?
Eleazar, Lazarus. Lazarus, yeah.
And it was written to the seven churches of Asia Minor
Yeah, so 7 churches of Asia Minor.
prior to 70 AD.
Prior to
Right.
Do you guys remember how we figured that out?
something to do with the temple.
The 30th.
Was in like the 5th chapter or something about him measuring.
The temple? Yeah, so let's go to that.
Right. He had to measure the temple.
Yeah, do you guys remember where that was at? I'm quizzing these guys. They didn't know it. They were on the spot.
AD, different terminology than AD, but I'm not familiar with it.
So where are we going, darling?
Okay, do you guys remember where we were at?
No.
Well, we were still in chapter 1.
Well,
Are we supposed to remember this stuff?
Yeah, see, then that's how I know if you learned something.
Okay.
Okay, internal evidence.
We got to chapter 2.
Let's turn to Revelation 11.
Oh, 11?
Yeah, that is going to show us for certain.
When it wasn't written.
Yeah,
Revelation chapter 11.
Revelation 11. So we're doing a preview.
Most people believe that it was written after the destruction of Jerusalem, but it was actually written before.
Yeah, probably all of our study Bibles say it was written in AD 95.
Right. But that's incorrect.
And they have one external evidence, and it's very, very lame.
Why is that the wrong date?
AD 95. Well, we're going to see in chapter 11, verse 1 and 2. Yeah, we're going to see. We're going to see internal evidence.
Okay.
And
Chapter
of course,
11, verse what?
Verse 1.
I'm competing with the little girl back there. Let's see. Okay, verse 1. Who wants to read?
I'll read. And a reed like a measuring rod was given to me, and the messenger stood saying, Rise and measure the dwelling place of Elohim and the slaughter place and those worshiping in it.
And verse 2.
But cast out the court which is outside the dwelling place, and do not measure it, for it has been given to the nations, and they shall trample the set apart city underfoot for 42 months.
Okay, so if this was written in AD 95, the destruction of the temple was completely done by AD 70. So if it was written in AD 95, then what temple was he measuring?
Exactly.
Oh, that's right.
Why would
I remember it now.
Yeah. Well, see, this is good review for us.
Wow.
Okay, so why would the angel tell him to measure something that was already destroyed?
It wasn't there. Yeah. Good.
Oh.
Yeah. And we're doing Revelation 11, 1 and 2. We're reviewing a little bit.
You mean verse 1.
So that tells us that the temple had to have been still standing.
Correct.
Right, Carol?
Yep, I'm getting another Bible. Go ahead.
Okay.
Which Bible, Carol?
Well, I was reading out of the Messianic scriptures, and then I've got the scriptures.
Oh, okay.
That's what
So,
I
which one are you all using?
We're using all different kinds.
Okay, that's fine.
I just read out of the scriptures.
I have.
Okay.
I don't know if you can. Oh, you can't see this.
My husband, I have the New King James Version.
Yeah, and I have the Apostolic Bible Polyglot.
I have
Yeah.
Bollinger and the Greek New Testament.
I have like
Okay.
So we're all different.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. So we see in verse 1 that the angel told him to measure the temple.
Measure the temple.
Okay.
And that would have been complete if you were sitting in John's shoes and the angel comes and says, measure the temple. He would have been like, what temple?
What temple? Because there wasn't.
Because that had been 25 years later, right? So AD 95 could not have worked. So that gives us opportunity to say it was written before AD 95. And then also it says here in verse 2, it says, and the outer courtyard of the temple put out, and do not measure it, for it was given to the nations and the holy city, and they will tread on it 42 months. Well,
I just got it.
you just
Duh.
got it?
Yeah,
And the Holy
that's
City
how long
shall
it took
be.
them to get to the city. Was 42 months.
It
What
took
do you
them
mean?
42 months. They actually, there was 3 walls
Yes.
in the city, and it took them 42 months to get all the way through.
Prior to that, though, it took them 42 months to get to the first wall, the outer wall.
Yeah, they
Then
had
it took
to,
them another 42 months to get to the.
possibly, yeah.
Yes.
I know that 42 months,
7
it's
years.
accurate. So,
And there's
Are we
always
talking about the people who blew the horn? Who are we talking about to get there?
How come, is this all in Josephus, the 42 months?
Yeah.
Sacked the temple.
Yeah.
in 70.
Just wondering why we don't have
Here they are
scriptures
marching
that
toward
talk
it.
about
Okay.
it.
And it
yeah, it would be nice, but no.
took,
Just, I was just
it
curious.
took them
But
42 months
Josephus,
to get
so
through the
I have
woods
Josephus
and
right
first
here.
wall. It took them
And-
We have a
and-
Josephus.
Yeah, and we can look all that up. It's just hard because Josephus is really hard. So that gives us rise to that. And then do you guys remember the other internal evidence we found?
Something
this-
happened at 30 AD. and I can't remember.
Okay, so we believe that it happened during Nero's reign, 64 to 68 AD.
Okay.
The 68 AD was when Nero killed himself. And one of the evidences of this is if you go to Revelation 17,
Nero, what was his reign? 60.
64 to 68 AD. I think. But I know
That's
he
close
ended
enough.
at 68. Yeah. So when it talks about the 7 kings,
Oh, yeah.
remember
Yes.
7 angels.
the 7
No,
kings?
The 7 kings of the 7 Caesars.
Oh, and
Okay,
and
so
who-
starting in verse 10, 16:10.
16:10 or 17?
17:10.
I
Yes.
think that's where it is.
And there are 7 sovereigns.
Okay.
5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other has not yet come. And when he comes, he has to remain a little while.
Okay, so there were 5 Caesars, and I have them listed here. Okay, so it started out with Julius Caesar, and then Augustus, then Tiberius, then Gaius, then Claudius. And then the 6th Caesar was Nero. And he said that that is the one who now is.
Now is
6, where was it?
starting in verse 10.
17:10.
Right. It doesn't list them.
Right.
Those are her notes.
We went to
17:10.
17.
And the kings, the 7 are the 5 fallen and 1 is. Some books have now is.
Okay,
This one,
so-
1 is, and the other is not yet.
And
When he comes, it should be a little while.
And who was
He's
that?
only for a little while. His name was Gaia. Let's see, where is it? Galba.
Oh, Galba, okay.
Galba, and he only reigned for 6 months.
Oh, okay.
So that was a little while.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so there's
Yeah.
another
I just
one.
read that.
So we got the 5 kings, if you want to write them down. Julius Caesar, Augustus.
I go too fast.
Okay, you want to write them down?
Augustus.
You want to take notes?
Julius.
It's recorded.
Julius Caesar,
I spell Caesar.
Augustus.
I spell Caesar.
It doesn't matter. C-E-A-S-E.
That's right.
yeah, Augustus, Tiberius, Gaius. I have Gaius.
I'm sorry.
Caligula.
Spell it again.
I think it's Gaius.
Gaius.
Elias.
And Claudius.
Claudius.
Yeah. Those are the 5. And then the 6th one is Nero. Oh, he reigned from 54 AD to June 68 AD.
54 AD. So when, honey?
68.
All right, and then the 6th one was who?
The 7th one. The 6th one is Nero.
Yeah.
The 7th one is Galba. Galba.
Yeah.
And he reigned for yet a little while,
months.
which is 6 months.
All right.
So we believe it was written, John, this gospel, or the book of Revelation was written 64 to 68 AD.
I only have 6 due to be done in this one. Julius Caesar, Augustus, Tiberius, Teius, Nero, Galba. Who done
I
this?
have Julius, Augustus, Tiberius, Gaius, Claudius,
Claudius. Okay.
Nero.
We're thinking it was written between 64 and 68 AD.
Yeah,
The book Revelation.
yeah. And Nero, he killed Peter and Paul. He boiled John in oil.
Just
And-
one.
I don't know.
I didn't kill him, though.
It didn't kill him. He boiled him in oil, and then he banished him to Patmos.
So he killed John.
He didn't kill him. He boiled him in oil, but it didn't kill him. They couldn't kill John.
So who did he kill? Paul?
He killed Peter. He crucified him upside down.
Yeah.
He beheaded John in
I'll
AD
take a baby,
67.
Kevin.
So we know that all of Paul's writings were written before AD 67.
All of Paul's reading.
Yeah, so all before the temple was
Okay.
destroyed.
Okay. There's a bottle. Okay.
So that tells us that if the book of Revelation was written before AD 70, that it could be about their lifetime, not necessarily our future,
Right.
but their future.
Right. It's their prophecy, not ours. Right.
Yeah. And we have to understand the book of Revelation according to the first audience and what they thought it meant to them before we could ever put it toward our own lives.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
So, if we turn to Revelation 1:1, we're going to get some more evidence. Who wants to read that?
Okay.
We're going to read 1:1 again.
Yeah.
Well, mine says the revelation from Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants what must soon take place. He made it known by sending his angel to his servant John.
Okay, stop. So this tells you the purpose. It says the revelation of Jesus Christ, Yahushua HaMashiach, which God gave to him to show to his servants or bondmen. Mine says bondmen.
Mine says servant.
Servants. What must soon take place. Mine says what must take place quickly.
Mine says what has to take place with speed.
Okay, so we got speed, quickly, soon,
Yeah.
shortly,
Yeah.
and and he signified having sent by his angel to the bondman John. So that tells me that whatever he's going to tell John, it's going to happen soon.
Soon.
And soon is not 2,000 years.
Correct.
It's just not. So we got if this was written 64 to 68 AD, something was going to happen quickly in their lifetime. And we know that Yahusha prophesied that the temple would be destroyed.
How many grams does it take to feed a baby for crying out loud?
And for Jerusalem, for the Israelites, the Jews, the temple was everything. It was everything. And for them to lose the temple meant they would lose their entire social structure. They would lose their government. It would be like taking over the White House.
Yeah.
And so Yahusha prophesied that this was going to happen. And some of the scholars that I studied, they said that the book of Revelation could have been John's Olivet Discourse. Because Matthew, Mark, and Luke, in their Olivet Discourse, he prophesied the fall of the temple and the taking over Jerusalem, and that would be Matthew 24, Luke 21, and Mark 13. And John didn't have one, but he wrote an entire book about it. So that's pretty significant.
Okay.
So then we move. So we've seen that. But there's time stamps like that all throughout. We move on down where he talks about when he comes in the clouds. Where is that?
There's so many of them. I don't know which one.
Well, the very next few verses here.
Oh.
Well, we'll just read here. Okay, so verse 4, John, to the 7 assemblies in Asia, favor
to you. Grace to you.
Yeah. Oh, favor to you and peace from the one being and the one was and the one coming and from the 7 spirits, which are before his throne. Now, we reviewed the 7 spirits. We went to... of course, I had all this notes. We did all this already, so. And that's the Holy Spirit, like the spirit of knowledge, wisdom, understanding. Do you remember them all?
Are you talking about the angels?
The 7 spirits of the Holy Spirit.
Oh, that was something else that I didn't read off.
Oh, okay.
That was like the attributes.
Yeah, we went to some
Yeah. I
chapters.
don't remember where it was.
I am so nervous.
Always.
I'm not because it's recording.
That's all right. You can.
Aw, don't worry. It's wonderful.
Okay. Okay. And from Jesus Christ, the witness and trustworthy, the firstborn from the dead, and the ruler of the kings of the earth, to the one loving us and bathing us from our sins in his blood, and made us a kingdom, priests to God and to his Father. To him be the glory and the might into the eons of the eons. Amen. Behold, he comes with the clouds, and every eye shall see him, even the ones who stabbed him. And they shall lament over him, all the tribes of the land. It could be earth. That same Greek word is also land. So if we change that to land, it changes everything. So all the tribes of the land mourn over him, and they all seen him. Instead of trying to see lightning across the entire earth.
Just that land.
Yeah. Okay. And he says, so what do you notice, Carol, about these verses right here, about him coming? Who will see him?
Every eye.
Everybody.
Well, and who else?
The ones who pierced him.
Yes,
Ah,
the ones who pierced him.
Yeah.
Now, when did they live?
Well, after Jesus died till they died.
They're not here today?
Mhm.
You sure?
Well, I'm not sure of anything.
My service is recording.
Yeah. So we know that he's telling them he's going to come back, and even those who pierced him will see him. That's a time statement.
Okay, he didn't say he's coming back. He said he's coming in the clouds.
Okay, yeah.
He's coming with the clouds. He doesn't say he's
Comes
coming
with the
back.
clouds.
He's coming
So
with the clouds.
what we did, Carol, is we researched what that meant, the clouds, and we looked up a whole bunch of verses. And we'll just look up one just for an example, maybe two. Here's my cloud notes. I have too many notes. Okay. Carol, look up Isaiah 19:1. And somebody, can I get a volunteer to look up Nahum 1:3?
I can do that.
I don't know what Nahum is.
Okay. Well, at least she knows it's a book in the Bible now. And who wants to look up?
You said Nahum 1:3?
Yeah.
Not in my book.
And Exodus 34, 5-7. Who wants that?
How many? 5 what?
5-7.
34?
Exodus 3. Okay, so you got it, Carol?
Yes.
Okay, can you read that for me?
Right. The burden of Israel. Behold, Yahuwah rides upon a swift cloud and shall come to Egypt. Or wait a minute. Mizraim. Is that Jerusalem? And the idols of Egypt shall be removed at his presence, and the heart of Egypt shall melt in the midst of it. I'm reading it from Hebrew, so I'm kind of not sure.
So okay, so how did Yahuwah come?
Riding on the clouds.
Oh, he came riding on the clouds, and what did he do?
He shall come to destroy the idols.
So it was destruction, it was judgment, right?
Yep.
Okay. So there's an instance where he came. Now Nahum 1:3. Marissa, you got Nahum?
Sorry, I was on
Pay
my
attention
children
to
over there.
babies.
Nahum 1:3. Yahuwah is slow to anger and great in power, and will not at all acquit the wicked. Yahuwah has his way in the whirlwind and in the storm. and the clouds are the dust of his feet.
So the clouds are what?
The clouds are the dust of his feet.
Interesting. And who's that against, or what is he doing?
He is. It looks like coming to bring judgment against Nineveh.
Nineveh? Okay.
Because later it talks about he rebukes the sea and makes it dry, dries all the rivers.
Okay. So we see two examples of him coming on the clouds. One is the clouds are the dust of his feet. The other one, he's riding on the clouds. Now, what else did I have? Exodus 34, 5-7. Who's got that?
I do, but it doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make
I
sense?
just lost it.
Well, I'm showing you different examples of the clouds.
What, 34?
Yeah, 34, 5-7.
All right.
We're looking for cloud.
Okay. And Yahuwah came down in the cloud and stood with him there and proclaimed the name Yahuwah. And Yahuwah passed before him and proclaimed, Yahuwah, Yahuwah, and El compassionate and showing favor, patient, and great in loving commitment and truth. What? Through 7?
So, yeah.
Watching over, loving commitment for thousands, forgiving crookedness and transgression and sin, and by no means leaving unpunished, visiting the crookedness of the fathers upon the children and the children's children to the 3rd and 4th generation.
So in this one, we show him coming down in the cloud, and he's talking to Moses.
Compassionate.
And he's speaking through a cloud. So for his children, he's cloud. And then there's other times when he comes in the cloud for judgment. And even in that text that you read, talked about blessing and judgment.
Judgment, correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now we see that the cloud has something significant for, it's called a Hebrew idiom. And when the original readers read that,
Nevaeh, you've got to really protect her neck, his neck. Got to hold his head. There you go. There you go. Because see, they're not strong enough to hold it yet.
Oh, there you disappeared. Oh, now I see a stapler. Oh, there you are again. Okay. So, does that make sense, Carol? That coming in the clouds doesn't necessarily mean a man dressed in a white robe that's 5 foot tall, and he may be brown or black or something, and he's riding on a horse and coming in the cloud, and we'll all see him.
Cloud surfing.
Yeah.
Or that it'll be
it's
the
not
last
to the
final times.
Yeah.
He comes in the cloud.
Yeah, we see, and actually there's verses after verses after verses of clouds, and him being in the clouds different times throughout Scripture. So for Yahusha to say that he's coming in the clouds, they automatically knew it was judgment.
Mm-hmm.
They knew.
Yeah.
And so when you go back and you read Luke chapter 21, did you do that, Carol? Did you read Luke?
I've been writing them down.
Okay. So when you go and you look, go back and read Luke 21. I don't know, maybe we should just do it.
Yeah.
Let's just do it. It's good review for us. Okay. These guys are actually learning, I see it. Which is wonderful. They better, because we've been over this about 10 times.
I just found Nahum.
Might take 11 for me. Or 15.
We'll get those cobwebs out of the brain.
Different. This is
Okay, let's go to Luke 21.
The whole thing or what?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
The reason why we're looking at Luke 21 is it's the best explanation, and then we can look at the other ones. But Luke 21 shows it.
So I'll start. As Jesus looked up, he saw the rich putting their gifts into the temple treasury. He also saw a poor widow put in 2 very small copper coins. Truly, I tell you, This poor widow has put in more than all the others. All these people gave their gifts out of their wealth, but she gave out of her poverty, put in all she had to live on. Some of his disciples were remarking
Okay,
about...
stop for a second. Okay, where were they at?
The temple.
The temple.
Mhm.
Okay, so verse 5, who wants to read?
I'm not there, I don't even
And
know.
Okay,
some
Mike.
spake of the temple, what was adorned with goodly stones and gifts, he said.
Uh-huh.
As for these things which ye behold, the days will come in the which there shall not be left one stone
Mhm.
another upon another that shall not be thrown down. And they asked him, saying, Master, but when shall these things be? And what sign will there be when these things shall come to pass?
Okay, stop.
Okay.
So what are they talking about?
The temple coming down.
Temple coming down. So what was the question?
When?
When will these things be? What things?
When the temple comes down.
When the temple comes down. What is the sign of whenever these things are about to take place? What things? The temple coming down,
Let's see
right?
where-
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we gotta keep that in our minds. That's the questions they're asking. They're talking about the temple. Okay?
Right.
Number 8.
And he said, Take heed that ye be not deceived, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ. And the time draweth near, go ye not therefore after them. But when ye shall hear of wars and commotion, be not terrified, for these things must first come to pass, but the end is not by and by.
Okay, stop there.
Okay.
So who is Carol? Who is he talking to?
His disciples, his followers.
His disciples. So he says, whenever you shall hear of wars and commotions. So who's you?
The disciples.
The disciples. It's not us. It's not the 21st century church, right?
Right.
Okay. And so there was antichrists. Yeah. Is this making sense to you, Carol?
Oh yeah, it really is.
Oh yeah.
And just to make you feel comfortable, Carol, she did this to us too the first time we were here. Made us answer all the questions.
Yeah, I know. She's the teacher. She can really teach. That's so good.
Okay, Carol. So now we know that, and I want to tell you, in history there was many anti-messiahs at this time because they were they knew the timing of the prophecies lined up for the Messiah to come. And those who had rejected Yahusha as Messiah, they were still looking for the Messiah. So there was all kinds of anti-messiahs or false Christ running around saying, I'm the Messiah, So that gives you an idea of what the background is. Okay, so keep on reading.
Then said he unto them, Nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and great earthquakes shall be in divers places, and famines, and pestilences, and fearful sights, and great signs shall there be from heaven. But before all these, they shall lay their hands on you, and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues, and into prisons, being brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake.
Okay, stop.
Okay.
So who's being delivered up into the synagogues?
Disciples.
The disciples, right? Carol? Carol, you still with us?
Oh.
I don't hear her. Oh, you muted me, Carol. So I can't hear you. Now you're back. Are you back?
Sorry.
Okay. So Carol, who was being delivered up into the synagogues?
The people at that time.
And who's he talking to?
He's talking to his disciples.
The disciples. And he's saying some of you will be delivered up. You, because we got to remember who he's talking to. So let's see, I lost where we're at.
Was it
they're gonna,
13. I mean,
yeah,
that's where you wanted to read.
yeah.
And it shall. Oh,
Okay, verse 12.
oh,
But before these things, before the earthquakes and the famines and all that,
yeah.
these things, they're going to put hands on you, their hands on the disciples, and they shall persecute the disciples and deliver up the disciples to synagogues and prisons and leading them to kings and governors because of his name, of Yahushua's name. So, oh, where'd you go, Carol? She disappeared. Okay.
So what if we had 6 people on there? Would there be a
We-
picture of all of them?
Yeah, if they had camera.
Oh.
Otherwise, they'd call in. It's just.
Okay.
Well, there you are, Carol.
I'm sorry. My husband called, so I had to jump real quick.
Okay, you disappeared on me. I'm like, oh, she disappeared. Okay, so Carol, now we know in the book of Acts that all this took place. We know they were delivered to kings. Paul was delivered up to kings. We know that they were put in prison from the book of Acts. All that happened. They were flogged. Yeah. So that already took place. Okay. Let's see, verse 14.
14. Settle it therefore in your hearts not to meditate before what ye shall answer. For I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which all your adversaries shall not be able to gainsay nor resist. And ye shall be betrayed both by parents and brethren and kinsfolks and friends, and some of you shall they cause to be put to death. And you shall be hated of all men for my name's sake. But there shall not an hair of your head perish. In your patience ye shall possess your souls. You shall possess your souls. And when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation is nigh.
Okay, stop there. Okay, so verse 21:20. And whenever you, the disciples, should behold the encircling of the armies around Jerusalem, then you know that her desolation approaches.
Do we have Josephus, where to find that in Josephus? Do you have the reference?
I have a bunch of stuff. I'm not sure if I have that exact reference, but there is. He writes extensively about that timing.
Okay.
There's a whole bunch. Yeah, there's a whole bunch, and I can get you that information. There's some.
You know what? I will just get my iPad and Google it, and I
Yeah,
have an answer for you guys. I bet you Google will come up with something.
yeah. I have a bunch of stuff, but I don't know if I have that exact thing. I don't have all my notes here either. But if you turned to, of course I left that book at home, but if you do the parallel study, we did this. If you look at Matthew and Luke and Mark, Matthew, Mark, and Luke at the same time, you will see this verse right here has to do with the abomination of desolations. And
That is 20.
yeah, 21:20. It will refer directly to, in the other ones, the abomination of desolation that was talked about by Daniel. So we know, because of this verse, we know that the abomination of desolation is when they desolate Jerusalem, when it is surrounded. And in, I believe, somewhere around 64 AD is when they started surrounding Jerusalem, the Roman armies.
42 months. So
64. Well, it took 7 years from start to finish.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was about 64 AD. And when they started to surround him, it says, then the ones in Judea let them flee into the mountains. and the ones in the midst of her, let them withdraw. So the ones in the midst of Jerusalem, get out. So he told them to go to the mountains of Judea, get out, and then get out of the city. And it's really important to understand that this happened right just before Passover. And the whole city was clear, full of people. Yeah, I'm in hot flash. Want me to open the door?
Does anybody else want?
Just you.
Okay.
That's good. Thank you.
So we know that and the city that they fled to in history is called Pella. Pella. If you want to research that out. Pella is where the Christians ran to.
Oh,
They fled to
they fled.
the ones that left the city that obeyed these words. They were saved and they were preserved. And who knows, maybe they lived there 2.5 years. You never know. I don't know that history yet. I didn't go into all the historical stuff. But that's really significant. And so it said not to go. And then it says, and let the ones in the region not enter into this city, into her. So Carol,
Sorry, repeat that.
okay, it says, let the ones that are in the regions not enter into her, the city of Jerusalem. That's verse 21, the end of verse 21.
Okay. Mountains, and let those who are in the midst of her go out, and let not those who are in the fields enter her. Okay.
Okay. So, just before Passover, all the people were running into the city. They were coming to the city because of Passover. So if they were to observe Passover, they would be disobeying Yahushua's words because the city got surrounded by the Romans at that time. And so that was the time they had to flee instead of going into the city. And they all got locked in. They couldn't get out. So those who obeyed and didn't do Passover in the city. So there you go. You got the temple and you got Yahushua's words. Which one? What are we going to do?
Well,
obey the old covenant or the new?
Exactly.
Titus, is that who attacked Jerusalem?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, so in Josephus, it is book 5 of the Jewish War. I think is what he called it.
Yeah, book 5 of the War of the Jews.
Yeah, the Jewish War, book 5, is where you find, I guess, historical evidence of Luke 21:20 taking place.
Oh, okay. Luke 21:20 is in book 5 of War of the Jews.
Sorry, I wanted to have on my notes so that, when you're talking to people and you're like, well, this has already happened. Like, you can bring them to something and, actually walk them through versus
and
them trying to take your word, I guess.
Yeah, thank you for looking that up for us. Okay, verse 22. Who wants to read that?
Are we in
21:22.
We're in Luke?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I don't care.
Go ahead.
Because these are days of vengeance to fill all that have been written. And woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing children in those days, for there shall be great distress in the earth and wrath upon this people. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trampled underfoot by the nations until the time of the nations are filled.
Okay, stop there. Okay, this happened in history too. That whoever left the city that tried to get out of the city, they would catch them and they would sell them as slaves.
Yeah.
And Josephus talks all about this. So if they surrendered, they got sold and they got to live. And then this says that until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. In church, they taught us that is the age of the Gentiles, us, the church age.
Dispensational stuff.
Yes, and that's not what this is talking about. This is the time of the Gentiles trampling on the city. And we learned in Revelation chapter 11 that it's 42 months. Revelation chapter 11 told us how much time that it would be to trample on the city. That's the time of the Gentiles, the time of the nations. And I heard the argument, well, Rome was just one nation. No, Rome went from nation to nation to nation, and whoever surrendered to them either entered in as warriors and joined in the war as in the Roman army. So there was multiple nations represented with the Roman army.
Well, like Hitler went from country to country and took people with him.
Yeah.
To help destroy the rest of the world.
Yeah. So that's how he got his army bigger and bigger. So you got multiple nations after. Okay, you can continue.
We're on like 25. And there shall be signs in the sun and moon and stars, and on the earth anxiety of nations, in bewilderment at the roaring of the sea and agitation, men fainting from fear and the expectation of what is coming on the earth, for the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then they shall see the Son of Adam coming in a cloud with power and much esteem. And when these matters begin to take place, look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near. And he spoke a parable to them. Look at the fig tree and all the trees. When they have already budded, observing it, you shall know for yourselves that summer is now near. So you also, when you see these matters take place, know that the reign of Elohim is near. Truly I say to you, this generation shall by no means pass away till all shall have taken place.
Okay, stop there. So what generation, Carol, is he talking about?
The generation they were in.
Yeah, so you see that?
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah, and we studied the cloud already. So we know that the cloud has to do with the judgment, so him coming in the cloud. And their redemption, either they're going to be killed and actually go into the their bodies will die and they'll enter in the Holy of Holies, or enter into his presence immediately, or they actually will be saved from the persecutors, which was the zealots. The Jewish zealots were the worst. They destroyed themselves from within. They turned on each other, and actually in the book of Revelation it says that. I read about that yesterday, chapter 5 or 6, and it says they'll turn on each other and kill each other, and that's what happened inside the city. Most of the Jews that were killed, there was, I think it said, in Josephus, I think he said 1.1 million Jews. Most of them that were killed by other Jews. And actually they were happy to see Rome come and stop it.
They were starving to death.
Yeah, they were starving to death.
Yeah.
But the neat thing about this is the last little few words is, and my words shall not pass away. Doesn't matter what happens to heaven and earth.
Heaven
His
and earth
words,
shall pass away, but my
words,
words shall not pass away.
And his words are Yeshua.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and Yeshua
That's
is
just
talking.
amazing to me.
Yeah, and we have his word still. After all of that, we still have his word. And so we see this generation shall not pass away. And now we see heaven and earth shall pass away. Now that gets us into a whole new thing of heaven and earth.
Yeah.
Does heaven and earth mean the world and the world is going to be destroyed?
I don't know.
Now you don't know, because now we know he's not.
It says earth.
So
what does it say in the Septuagint regarding that verse 33?
verse 33. I hate these glasses. Okay.
Let's see.
The heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words will no way pass away. But take heed to yourselves, lest any one of your heart should be weighed down in dizziness and intoxication and anxiety of life. And suddenly that day shall come upon you.
Okay. I was just wondering if you used the words heaven and earth.
Yeah, okay. So what I learned from Josephus, I posted this on Facebook. It got a nice dispute going on. Josephus taught us, so we can go back to those posts. But Josephus said that the temple was significant, was considered heaven and earth. The Holy of Holies was heaven.
That's where heaven
That's
met
where
earth.
it's
All
where
right.
heaven met earth.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because the Holy of Holies is where Yahuwah resided, that they believed he's resided, and then the people could not go into the Holy of Holies, but they could go on the outside, and the colors and the labor and everything, and then the outer courts was considered the sea, like the nations, and
Okay, pause.
okay.
So the holies of holies, Josephus says that they used to think the holies of holies as heaven.
Heaven, yes.
That's where heaven and earth met.
Yep.
Because Yahuwah.
And this is on my Facebook on the wall. 2 days ago, this week.
Let me reference Psalm 102, verse 26. And the heavens are the work of thy hands; they shall perish, but thou shalt endure. Yea, all of them shall wax old like a garment. As a vesture shalt thou change them, and they shall be changed. Wow.
Okay.
I mean, they,
Are you
26.
Luke 20?
No, Psalms.
Oh, yeah.
Psalms. It's just a reference from Luke. That. I know. Drives me crazy.
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay,
So-
and then you said what was the sea?
The sea, it can resemble all the nations.
Okay.
The outer courts.
Outer
It's the sea.
courts was
Yeah.
considered the sea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, if I remember correctly. I may be wrong, but there was a bunch of historical reference on my post. Okay? So, Carol, you can go back on there and see that too. All of you can, except for Karen.
I haven't learned it yet.
Karen, she's kind of
Electronically
illiterate.
challenged.
Yeah, you might have to print it out for her. So we have an idea, and it makes sense if he's saying heaven and earth is going to pass away. He started the conversation talking about the temple being destroyed.
So I've got a question. Is there a heaven then that we have been taught?
Okay, so I believe it's the veil. Remember what happened when he died?
Mhm.
The veil
Yeah,
was
the torn.
rent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's a veil between heaven and earth, and it's his presence. Wherever his presence is, you're in heaven. Does that make sense?
Okay.
It's just another dimension.
I think there is a different
It's
dimension.
parallel.
Yeah.
So wait,
yeah.
there's no golden
Yeah.
road?
Not up in the
Where's
outer
our
space.
I think it's there. He says you're there.
Yeah, I don't have all those questions, all those answers, but I have a feeling I think he spoke in the earthly mindset. So we had an understanding
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that it's glorious. Well, we want
Maybe at the end, all
material
of the
stuff.
dimensions will be melded into one. Yep.
And-
Eternity.
and
that is
now-
eternity.
So now,
Maybe.
now that we're in the new covenant, and we are the temple, heaven and earth,
Me.
the new heavens and the new earth has to do with the new covenant and how we relate, the new way of relating to
Right.
heaven and earth.
Right.
Yahuwah, it said, what's the prayer? He said, Yahusha said to pray this prayer, and he says, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Okay, so how can that happen? We have access to the Holy of Holies, according to Hebrews. We can enter in boldly. That's heaven. We have access through prayer. And Yah changes us in that process. And then we enter into the earth and manifest that change in the earth, bringing his will into the earth. Does that make sense?
Amen.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I wanted my mansion on the Golden Road.
Well, we're not through with that.
About your mansion. Yeah.
I'm with you, girl.
Yeah.
I think there's a place for it, whether it's a mansion or.
So heaven and earth, and in the book of Revelation, I discovered some areas where it says heaven and earth passed away in the past tense.
Oh, okay.
In one of my posts, I did that. I think it's in 21. So I'm like, interesting. I think Revelation 21.
Are we going back there? What are we doing?
No, I don't really want to. I just said that.
We're
gonna finish this.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's go on here because I'll make sure Carol's got this right and whoever else is listening. Where are we at?
I'm not sure.
Verse 35.
35.
21, 35.
34, actually.
I read 34.
Yeah.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
For it shall come as a snare on all those dwelling on the face of all the earth. Watch then at all times and pray that you be counted worthy to escape all this about to take place and to stand before the Son of Adam. And he was teaching in the set apart place by day, but at night he went out and stayed on the mountain of Olives.
Okay, so
Does yours say son of man or son of Adam?
Mine says son of man, but I can.
verse
Son of Adam.
36.
That's anthropon, which just means
Man.
human man.
Okay.
Okay. So that word earth in 35, that is still the same word that can be land. So if you changed that word to land, and reread that, for as a snare it shall come upon all the ones being settled upon the face of all the land. And we know that the Hebrews were focused on the land of Israel, the land, the promised land. It makes more sense if you read it as land and not earth.
And mine says whole earth.
Yeah, instead of the whole earth, put the whole land. That's all of Judea,
Face of the
Land,
land.
okay.
all of the north and the south.
Okay.
And this is all about what happens in Judea.
I'm gonna have to look that.
Be aware, and then at every season beseech that you should be deemed worthy and to flee from all the things being about to take place. About to take place. Does that mean 2,000 years take place?
All this about.
This is all about to take place.
So
You know, that just amazes me because, you know, for 50 years you think it's
One thing.
this is our future.
Right.
You know,
right.
how Lindsay talked, this
Yeah.
is our future. But it's not.
Shame on you, Hal Lindsay.
You know,
You messed us all up.
Well, he did the best he could.
Yes,
Yeah,
he
he
did.
did.
And
Okay.
he did what he was taught.
Exactly.
I just have to pick on him
Yeah.
just because she brought his name up. Okay. So these are about to take place in the disciples' lifetime.
Now where are we at? I'm lost.
We are, I have so many numbers on here. What was that? 36.
Okay.
36, yeah.
Oh, no.
So let's reread 36. Beware then at every season, beseech that you should be deemed worthy to flee from all these things, being about to take place, and to stand before the Son of Man.
Mm-hmm.
And he was by days in the temple teaching, and by nights coming forth to lodge in the mountain, being called Olives. And all the people rose early to him in the temple to hear him. So,
Wow.
yeah. So now if you...
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So now if you take this passage and you parallel it with Matthew 24 and and Mark 13...
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
All right.
And now, if we turn to Matthew, we'll find out exactly why.
Matthew 1,
Yeah.
24.
Let's go to 23. We're going to find out exactly
Is it 23
why.
or 24?
We're going to go to 23.
Okay.
It starts in 23.
Okay.
He is just bashing the Pharisees like crazy.
What,
You said Mark 13 was the other one?
Yeah, Mark 13. So, in 23, if you read, we're not going to do it today, but if you read the whole entire chapter of 23, you're going to see he's just slamming the Pharisees. Woe to you this, woe to you, woe to you, woe to you, over and over. And then you go to verse 37. This is the whole reason for the destruction of Jerusalem. And we've got to get this down because the church has just like skewed this over and pretended it didn't exist.
It didn't exist, but boy,
I mean,
by
6 years of Bible college, and they did not talk about this much at all. Okay,
37.
so
Yep.
23:37.
23:37.
Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the one killing the prophets
the
and
prophets.
stoning the one sent to her. How often I wanted to assemble your children, in which manner assembling a hen, her nestlings under the wings of naught. Behold, your house is left to you desolate. There's the abomination of desolations again. Desolation. Grab a hold of that because, they taught us all kinds of weird stuff about the abomination of desolations.
Mm-hmm.
It's yeah.
Okay.
Verse 38. Your house is left to you desolate.
Mm-hmm.
Desolation, remember?
Behold, is left to you the house of you.
Yeah, mine says, behold, is left to you your house desolate.
And mine
This
says,
doesn't say anything about desolate.
Your house is left to you laid
it's
waste.
and mine says desolate.
Apunamos or something like that.
It's not in the Greek
2048.
text.
Well, it's in this Greek text.
Oh,
What
I got
is
Greek
oh,
text.
Mine says, see, your house is left to you desolate.
what is YIRM? Urim
I don't know.
22:5. It's a reference, but I don't
he is
know.
left.
So the desolate one is
That's
2048.
That's Jeremiah.
Jeremiah
Yeah,
22:5.
Jeremiah.
Just a minute.
Because I have the same thing on it.
Jeremiah.
What'd you say?
So what are you guys looking at?
I'm going to look up Jeremiah 22:5.
Okay.
It's a reference to that.
Oh,
I don't know.
it's back there.
Psalm, Proverbs.
It must
Well,
be
Not in this.
Not in that one. That's all turned
Here we
around.
go. Here we go. I found it. What did I say? 22:5.
Jeremiah 22:5.
Is that referring to the desolate?
Yes. 22:5. But if
It doesn't
you
matter,
do
you
not,
can use that one. They get mixed up all the time.
but if you do not obey these words, I swear by myself, declares Yahuwah, that this house shall become a ruin. So that's
Yeah.
he's prophesying the.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then verse 39, for I say to you, in no way should you behold me from now until whenever you should say, blessed is he who is coming in the name of the Lord. And that was the very next time he came back to the temple was when he came in riding on the donkey and they all went, blessed is he, Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna,
Yeah.
blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.
Yeah.
So he said, I'm not going to be in this temple anymore until I come back at that time.
Wow.
Yeah, and then he left from the temple, and then we continue on. But this right here tells you, that section tells you the reason why is because of all of the prophets that they
They
killed.
just murdered them. Yeah.
They murdered them. Now, if we go into Revelation, this is passing on forward, I believe in chapter 5, I think. Let me see. Oh, my book, my paper got
I'm
stuck.
sorry, where?
Revelation, chapter, I'm thinking it's chapter 5. Did I write it down? This is my notes from yesterday.
Let's see.
What are you looking for to say?
Okay. It was the people underneath the throne. When are you going to avenge my blood?
Oh.
Is it chapter 5? I read a whole bunch of chapters yesterday.
You are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals, for you were slain.
Where?
Verse 9, I think. 5:9.
5:9.
No.
And redeemed us.
No, I read it yesterday out of my other Bible.
How long?
How long will you avenge my blood?
Exactly.
How long? Okay, now that we just read about the prophets, about the prophets, it's their blood. And he says you have to wait until the rest come in. So this gives you another idea. Okay, it's the prophets that are crying out for vengeance. When are you going to avenge my blood? And of course, I read so many chapters yesterday, I don't remember where it was.
Well, where's my phone?
I don't know, dear.
Oh, I guess I could.
Right behind you.
It's right here somewhere. I'll find it.
Here.
Wait, what are you looking for?
Right behind you.
I know,
On the shelf.
I'm kind of lost. What are we looking
This
for?
side.
I can't.
Well, I turned to Revelation again. I wanted to tie in the fact that the now I lost it. My brain's had too much smoke in it lately.
Oh, wow.
I can tell my brain's not working right. Okay, so what did I want to tie in?
I'm not sure.
Okay,
Crying for vengeance.
Okay, so in Matthew we just read about the prophets, why he's going to destroy Jerusalem. And if we turn to Revelation, and if I could remember where I was reading last night.
I remember reading that.
Yeah.
You okay?
So you're looking at Revelation where it says
You good, Carol?
something.
Yeah, just got a coughing spell. It's okay.
Okay.
Okay, First Samuel.
It's here in Revelation. I just read it.
You
Okay,
did?
yeah, okay. No, let's see.
This
I don't know.
only
It's in
shows
here.
First Samuel. So you just read it
In Revelation.
verse-
Yeah, it's
I mean,
a chapter. It could be chapter 4, 5, or 6.
Oh, okay.
6:10.
Is it 6:10?
6:10. What a woman.
Oh, it's just Google.
Oh,
They cried with a
6,
loud
9.
voice.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
when he opened up this 5th seal, this is
seal.
NIV.
Okay.
I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slain because of the word of Yahuwah and of the testimony they had maintained. Okay, so the prophets, they had the word of Yahuwah and they had a testimony, and they were slain because of that. They called out in a loud voice, "How long, sovereign Lord, holy and true, until you judge the inhabitants of the land?" We're going to change that word earth to land. "And avenge our blood."
on the earth. Okay, so we want this to say
So whenever they say earth,
land.
we're going to do land. Because
And,
the Jews, we know that the Jews did not care about the whole earth. They cared about the land.
Yeah.
6:10.
10.
What?
10. 6:10.
6.
So tie this in with Matthew 23.
Mm-hmm.
verse 37, what was that? 37 to 39 or whatever.
Well, it needs to be exact if I'm going to make a note of it. What was it?
Matthew 23, 37 to...
No, that's, and as the days of Noah, so shall be the coming of the Son of
Matthew
Man.
23.
Oh, 23. Oh, I have it marked already. 3:30.
So now we see a correlation. We're going to see this throughout the book of Revelation. There's a correlation between the Olivet Discourses and book of Revelation. It talks about coming in the clouds. It talks about the judgment. And it's going to talk about the fall of Jerusalem, only in great detail. So the book of Revelation is about the fall of Jerusalem. It's about the old covenant Israel coming to an end and the new covenant Israel coming together.
The entire book, or just
the entire book. There is there's a comparison between the harlot and the bride.
Mm-hmm.
They are both a Jerusalem. The old Jerusalem is the harlot. The new
like in
Jerusalem
Hosea?
is the bride.
Like in Hosea?
Possibly.
Hagar.
But
Oh.
yeah, in Galatians, it talks about Hagar and Sarah.
Sarah is the new
Okay,
Jerusalem.
gotcha.
The new
Okay,
covenant.
the new Jerusalem.
Because
It's
Hosea was
us.
also required to marry a harlot, wasn't he?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So in Revelation, you're going to read about the harlot, the great harlot, and the Babylonian harlot, who they always say is the Catholic Church or America. No, it's Jerusalem, because it's the great city where our Messiah was crucified.
Right.
And I don't know what verse it says that.
Right.
Yeah, I've read it.
We're so self-centered. Oh, it's America.
It's America.
No, it's all about
We're Babylon.
I never did. I didn't believe that because I was self-centered. I thought that was the truth.
Yeah, because they were told. We were told that.
I'm just saying the people who are reading it who then start teaching them, that must be us.
Yeah,
Our country must be in the Bible.
It's got to be in the Bible. We got to find it.
Can't Brazil be the harlot or something, right? I mean, no, America, we're going to be.
America.
Yeah. So Jerusalem. So if you think of the theme of Revelation, we discovered, okay, in the cloud, when we studied the clouds, there was a blessing for Yah's people and a curse for those who disobeyed. There was destruction. And judgment comes double-sided. It's always a blessing for those who walk in him and a curse for those who don't.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen this over and over. And as we studied into Revelation, we got into through chapter 2. We saw that. Yeah. And so something that I discovered that we read last week in Revelation chapter 1, where it talks about the Son of Man. Let's see. He says in verse 12. Okay, we're back in Revelation chapter 1. I turned around to see the voice that was speaking to me. And when I turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands, and among the lampstands was someone like a son of man, dressed in a robe reached down to his feet, and with a golden sash and around his chest. His head and his hair were like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were like blazing fire. His feet were like the bronze glowing in a furnace, and his voice was like the sound of rushing waters. In his right hand he held 7 stars, and out of his mouth came a sharp double-edged sword. His face was like the sun shining in all its brilliance. Okay, I discovered, I was doing research because I thought, man, we flew through that too fast.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd my notes go?
I don't.
Did they fall on the floor?
What's
Over there. He saw the same Son of Man that Daniel saw. If you go to Daniel 10:5.
7 for,
And that was Revelation chapter 1, correct?
12
10:5.
to you can go 12 to 18.
Okay, and then Daniel.
Daniel starting at 10:5.
Oh, we did that. You did that.
So we can go to Daniel,
I have to look at
and we'll close with this. Let's mark it.
He's
Let me find Daniel.
after Ezekiel.
Well, not in this.
Not in that
Oh,
book.
Okay.
I keep
He's
forgetting.
close to Ezekiel, though. In that book. So Daniel 10.
10.
Okay.
Hang on. Don't go too fast.
Okay. So Daniel had been fasting, and it was on the first month, so it was near the time. I believe it's the first month.
Okay.
But anyway, he had been fasting for 3 weeks. He saw a vision on the 24th day of the first month. As I was standing on the bank of the great river Tigris, I looked up, and there before me was a man dressed in linen with a belt of the finest gold around his waist. Now, what did we just read? In Revelation, chapter 12, or 1:12, 12:4,
Well,
13.
something about gold.
Yeah,
Gold.
12:13.
Brass feet.
It says in Revelation 1:13, and among the lampstand was someone like the Son of Man, dressed in a robe, reaching down his feet, with a golden sash around his chest. Okay, and okay, so we seen that in 10, or was Daniel 10:5. He dressed in the finest gold around his waist. His body was like a chrysolite, his face like lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, and his voice like the sound of a multitude. So what did
Multitude of waters.
Yeah, sound of rushing
Many
waters.
waters. Sound of many waters.
And his eyes were blazing fire in Revelation. I, Daniel, was the only one who saw the vision. The men with me did not see it, but such terror overwhelmed them that they fled and hid themselves. So I was left alone, gazing at this great vision. I had no strength left. My face turned deadly pale, and I was helpless. Then I heard him speaking, and as I listened to him, I fell into a deep sleep, my face to the ground. A hand touched me and set me trembling on my hands and knees. He said, Daniel, you who are highly esteemed, consider carefully the words I am about to speak to you, and stand up, for I have now been sent to you. And when he said this to me, I stood trembling. Then he continued, do not be afraid, Daniel, since the first day that you set your mind to gain understanding and to humble yourself before your Elohim, your words were heard, and I have come in response to them. But the prince of Persian kingdom resisted me 21 days. Then Michael, one of the chief princes, came to me to help me because I was detained there with the king of Persia. Now I have come to explain to you what will happen to your people in the future. Your people. Is that the whole world?
People. No. No.
That's Daniel's people. That's the Jews. That's Israel. This is important. For the vision concerning a time yet to come. Okay, and then it goes on about the king of the north and the kings of the south, and I guess that historically happened. I posted an article on Facebook, linking to somebody that did all the research and tied in all the kings, whoever followed all that.
As Daniel. So Daniel is a vision. He's seeing a vision of the future, right?
Yeah.
And then we have John here in Revelation 1, and he's seeing a vision.
He's also seeing a vision. So I remember reading in Daniel's vision thinking this was an angel, because the prince of Persia fought against him.
This one
wasn't
has
an
it plural. It was the sovereigns of Persia, not just one,
Yeah.
but sovereigns.
So this tells you, and we know from Revelation that this was Yahusha.
So has this happened?
So what I believe, yes, everything in Daniel, that his vision, his entire vision, happened.
Was referring to the destruction of Jerusalem.
It actually referred to the time of Ptolemy up to the destruction of Jerusalem. And all the kings in the north and everything. And on my wall on Facebook, I just posted Thursday an article that somebody went into great detail about. That you can go on my wall and look at the article. I mean, there's so much. If you have to really know your history, you have to research all of it out. But yes, and seeing that, so the battle between the king of the north and the south, it also, they tell us that's for the future. No, it happened already. It happened very detailed. He said it was so detailed, and all these different kings. And then the book of Revelation. Now, the one thing about Daniel's vision was sealed up for the time of the end. Remember that? Now, if you go to Daniel, and they cry out, "Who is worthy to open these seals?" I see a scroll that's covered with writing in the front and the back, he says. Well, what scroll is he talking about? Is it not the book, the scroll that Daniel saw? It's the same vision. One was sealed up for the time of the end. Daniel saw it. Now Revelation is the revealing of that same time of the end. It's about the fall of Jerusalem and the beginning of the new heavens and new earth, the new covenant. So when you hear new heavens, new earth, new creation, new covenant, it's all the same. New Jerusalem, new. All that is all new covenant. That's us.
New covenant. Okay.
We're new Jerusalem. We're new covenant. We're new creatures. We're of the new heavens and the new earth.
We are part of.
Now the people of the world, they have not even tasted it. And the people go, well, if this is the new heavens and the new earth, we're screwed. Because they're looking out at the world. They're not understanding what the scripture actually is saying, what the early church heard. They believed the temple was the heaven and the earth, where the relation between heaven and earth hit.
We've also been very passive though here on earth too. A lot of things.
Because we haven't understood.
We just didn't know.
The body has not understood.
And
well, look how many years she studied. My goodness sakes.
And now, and it was all for what? I mean, well, okay.
I mean, it led to this.
That. Yeah, exactly.
But see, you know what they taught us in school? One of the blessings is I went in there spirit-filled.
Right.
I went in there. He called me to go to that school. Uh-oh. Did one of the kids get hurt?
There are Yetis out there.
Okay.
Sound like a play laugh.
Oh, okay. One of the kids. I really value the schooling that
That's cool.
and one of my favorite, best classes was hermeneutics.
Oh, yeah.
That class taught us proper biblical research.
That's awesome.
That we cannot create a doctrine out of just reading the Bible and seeing what it says for us. Because I've read the Bible a lot, and it speaks to me. But that's not proper doctrine. That's just a inspiration of the Holy Spirit just talking to you through the Word. That's not a doctrine you're supposed to share out with the whole world. And that's what a lot of preachers have done. And a proper doctrine has to be based upon what the original intent of the actual letter or book meant. Otherwise, you're screwed. You can make it mean whatever you want it to mean.
Sure. And you can find a verse in there that'll line up with any train of thought.
Anything. Yeah. So we have a lot of stuff going through our heads that have been thrown in there throughout time that we have to work through. and reevaluate and go, okay. And some of it, what can stay, can stay. But if my goal for you guys is to teach you how to properly study the Word of God for yourselves, so that you can go out and you can read the Word and you can analyze it. And this book of Revelation is a perfect example, because they really have screwed with us. I went through Romans and Galatians class. I went through Minor Prophets. I went through the Gospels. And through Old Testament survey, New Testament survey. Okay, they taught us. You get the culture. You find out when it was written, the purpose, and you always go from the early church perspective, except Escat Lit. When I got to Escat Lit, they threw all that out.
Well, that doesn't even make sense.
What's eschatology?
Eschatological literature. And we studied the book of Revelation and some of the minor prophets and Matthew 24. And what they did is they put their own ideas on it, like it was rapture, pre-trib rapture. And they told the school, the school, that denomination, the Assemblies of God, they taught Escat according to their view. And it was all futuristic, had nothing to do with the early church. Why in the world would Yahuwah give this message to the early church if it was about 2,000 years in the future?
Exactly. It doesn't make
And it had no meaning to them.
Exactly.
Why in the world? And then why in the world would he prophesy about the fall of the temple and it not be mentioned anywhere?
Exactly. When we don't even have a temple.
Yeah.
Haven't had one for a day or two.
Yeah, the temple, and that was one of that outside of Yahushua's death, burial, and resurrection. That was the most significant event in Jewish history.
Exactly.
Was that destruction of the temple?
Well, to a lot of people, that was the biggie. That was the biggie.
That was the biggie.
Because they didn't care about him. Most of them
And
didn't care about him.
The Jewish people, all of their records were lost. Everything was destroyed at that time. The people that say they're Jews now, they have no record that they're Jews. It's just a religion. It's like people are born Lutheran.
Remember that woman over in that town we went to a couple times, and she claimed that this Levitical priest would come.
There's no way.
Some guy that claims he's a Levitical priest.
Yeah, they say you can find out from your DNA.
Like a dog, and we didn't know anything then, but we knew we didn't want that crap.
Yeah. And then
in Ontario.
The Ashkenazi Jews.
They're not even real Jews.
They're not even real Jews.
They don't have a drop of Judah in them.
So, and so the closest research that has shown where Judah went to, they were sold into slavery, and they're most likely the black Hebrews today that claim that they're Judah.
But some stayed in
some stayed in Palestine and they're Palestinians. I haven't done all that research, but I've looked at some of it.
Wasn't so long. He was fighting for his country.
Now they're almost.
Now they're almost
they converted to Islam because it was easier than living.
Well, they didn't have to. They chose to.
Did they?
Yeah, they had
to so that
to
they
live.
to live and stay on their land. Yeah. If they didn't convert, they'd be.
Yeah.
That's the way I understand it.
Yeah.
So it was easier to convert to Islam than to.
So they converted so they could stay on their land and stay alive.
Yeah. Yep. So what do you think, Carol?
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for inviting me, because I'm going to be here all the time now.
This changes it all, doesn't it?
I'm sitting here just with my mouth open. I mean, it makes sense. It actually makes sense.
Yep. That's what happened to us too.
It was crazy this week. I was looking for some stuff in the New Testament, and I don't know how many times the kingdom of Elohim kept showing up. Kingdom of Elohim, and I wasn't even trying to study that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it just, Yeah.
Yeah, so we
You're like, how did I miss this?
Yeah, well, 'cause they've been telling us we're waiting for a future king.
Right.
We have to wait for him to come so he can set up his kingdom. No, he came. He set up his kingdom. His kingdom is within us.
Right.
We
We just have to access it. We have to read, study, meditate.
I watched
spend time
a
with him.
video this week about the sin of presumption. And I was like, ooh, that's what we've done.
That's a sneaky
We've just,
thing.
you know, oh, someone told me this, and you just take it and you go with it.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, well, and we are naive to believe, and we didn't know the scripture. When you first get saved, you don't know the scripture, and you're going to believe your pastor. And the pastor, it's not the pastor's fault either, because he's believing who taught him.
Exactly. It's been handed down. Nobody has opened their mind. I believe that the Holy Spirit is leading you and helping you open your mind and heart.
And there's a whole group, but yes, the Holy. I think this is how true deception happens. They program us to see things a certain way.
Sure.
Yeah. And so when we read the Word, we put on those glasses. Right. And we read the Word according to those glasses.
Yeah.
So you didn't see the kingdom before.
Mm-hmm.
And now we took those glasses off, and we let the Word read for itself. And all of a sudden, now you're seeing it everywhere.
I love it.
And Anya, it's like a different oral law. You know what I mean? You learn something from a preacher or a teacher, and it's all their different things that they've come up with too, reading stuff, and it becomes like another type of oral law. You just follow it because they've done it.
You just
and we don't realize that they have been taken in, and they don't realize it.
Right.
Because in every seminary and school, there is a Jew who tries to control everything, and they disrupt the word hugely.
Well, that's why he says you'll find me when you search for me with your whole heart.
Right.
You have to search your very own self. We can't just take.
Yeah.
We just can't take for granted that anybody's telling us the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get in there and see it with your own eyes.
And see, now what I see since doing this is I see a huge thing. It's like a worldwide agenda.
Yes.
To use this futurism to get all the churches on board worldwide to reenact this whole event.
Wow.
In order for Yahushua to come back.
They need to re-examine everything that they've been taught.
Well, yeah, but
what would be the purpose of that?
The purpose would be to destroy all of Yahuwah's creation.
Exactly.
And to have his people on board for it. Because they think the destruction of the world is going to bring back Yahuwah.
Mm-hmm.
Yahusha.
Oh, it might bring them back.
And it's the enemy. It's the enemy's agenda.
If it brings him back, it's going to bring him back on a cloud.
Yeah.
And those who are bowing down to idols are going to receive judgment.
So I personally believe, now there's other people that are following this line of thinking, but they believe that he came back in AD 70 and then he's here to stay, and that's that. He is here to stay. But I see the cloud as judgment. And we read last week about the first and the last. He says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, and then he says, I'm the first and the last. And it took us to Isaiah 41:1, I believe, or somewhere. But anyway, it talked about the rise and fall of nations. He is the beginning of a nation. He's the end of the nation. Any nation that rises and falls in this universe, in this world, he starts it.
It's his doing.
And he finishes it.
Mm-hmm.
So that means if we use the Hebrew idiom, he comes riding on the cloud when he destroys a nation. That's what happens.
Mm-hmm.
He uses people to make that destruction happen. Because if you go in Isaiah and
Well, you see it. Judges. I mean, even when they're going to the promised land, right? Like these nations were committing atrocities, and they were going to go in and take them out, and that's how they got to the promised land. And then Judges, that the Israelites were turning away, and like in one chapter in Judges, all they're doing is 40 years they're out, 40 years they're back in, 7 years they're back.
Yeah,
so
it's craziness.
I'm surprised he's let America get away for it as long as they have.
But what I've seen in the church is that this is end time eschatology, end time stuff is big money.
Sure.
It's big money. Sure. It's control.
Well, it's fear mongering.
And it's fear mongering, and it's the way to bring people in because they're scared to death. My dad, when he went to talk to the butcher about having him come out this fall to butcher a bull or something, he said the butcher was scared to death about what's coming down. And he was starting to read his Bible because he didn't know what was going to happen. So the only reason why he was reading his Bible was to figure out what the end of the world was going to happen. People are scared to death that the world's going to end.
But it's not. We're learning that it is not.
And we may be at the end of an age, because it says eons upon eons. We may be near the end of an eon. It's not written in the Bible exactly what's happening, because all this was already written about. This was about the end of Jerusalem, the end of Israel. This was all about Israel. And we are New Covenant Israel.
If we take everything that we're learning, and I do see, are we coming upon it like an end of an age or an eon, or is there a judgment coming? In a way, the non-believers should be scared, right? They should be fearful.
Well, sure.
But
I agree.
Is that part of the message that us believers whose eyes are being opened to what we're reading now and realizing it's not the end of the earth, but he might come, like we're doing idolatry, we're doing abomination.
There's always
so is that where we're supposed to be bringing the hope of
the kingdom?
You know what?
Kingdom is here now.
This is how it happened throughout the Bible. People turn, and he brought judgment. But he's merciful, and you can stop. Like you can change. You can.
Yeah, and the message of Yahusha at that time was his kingdom. If you go all through the Gospels, it was his kingdom is at hand, his kingdom is near, and what is his kingdom like?
And that means he's judging every second of our lives.
Constantly judging.
Yes.
Right now.
Yes, that's what I believe. I believe everything. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And what we saw in Revelation, he started out with the churches, and he judged them. And Carol, go back and read in Revelation the churches. We'll start over with the churches next week, but reread it and get rid of the word angel and put messenger in there. And I'm telling you, it'll make a whole lot more sense.
Yeah.
That changed everything.
Well, and to say earth is land.
Yes, change earth to land, change angel to messenger, and think of it as a real person.
So that was 21 and 22. Wow.
Because that changed it for you guys too, didn't it? And it spoke volumes to me. And then I read on this week. I read on to the other churches and the other assemblies, and oh my goodness, the one that says, "I know your deeds, you're neither hot nor cold."
Yes.
He's talking to one person. He was talking to the pastor
of that church, right?
Of that church, the leader of that congregation. He says, "I'm about to spew you out of my mouth." He was talking to one person of the assembly, not the entire assembly. And then he says, "I stand at the door and I knock." Yeah. So that changes everything.
Sorry, he doesn't like to get his butt changed.
I don't know what time they have to leave.
Yeah, we gotta wrap up here.
Oh.
But so Carol, gotta be
what do you
food
want
for
us to
thought.
look at this
Oh
week?
my gosh. It's a gourmet meal.
Yeah. So Carol, I want you to read Matthew 23 and 24 and Mark 13 and compare that to Luke 21. Okay?
Okay. And are you going to have this recording viewed where other people can see it?
Yes, I'm going to go ahead and post this on Facebook and see what kind of response I get to the people that I know. And then we'll move on. I'm hoping to set up a YouTube account for the congregation and put it out there. I do have recordings that were done over the phone for the last couple weeks too, and I'm not sure how to.
I'd love to hear those.
Diana did, and she has them. She put it on WhatsApp. Something I had to download WhatsApp, and I could forward it to you if you download WhatsApp. And that's how we can get in there. But anyway, I'm not sure how to put those online. But this is recorded on cloud, and we can add it to Facebook, add it to YouTube, and we'll get the link out. But what I want you to do, and whoever else is listening on this, I want you to really examine Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Olivet discourses. 23. You can, and any other end time verses that you look at, and look for timestamps. Like there's a verse, I can't remember where it's at, that says that not all of you will die before you see the Son of Man.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. But that's got to be talking to the disciples back then.
To the disciples back then, not all of you will die.
Yeah,
so that's another proof text.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. They are everywhere, and we can't ignore it. We just can't. And and then also, Carol, to get you caught up, read chapter 1 of Revelation. Read that thoroughly.
Changing angel to messenger.
Yeah, change angel to messenger.
If she's bothering you, just tell her to lay down.
And earth to land, yeah. And then we'll start over with chapter 2 next week with the churches. Cool. And we'll redo the churches just to get everyone on board.
Cool. Okay.
Sound good?
Okay. Sound good.
Thanks, Carol.
Love you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Shabbat shalom.
Can I put some tape on this or something?
So I have something.
I'll have her fix it.
Are you all hung up? For us who come every week.
Hold on, let me finish. Let me make sure I'm done here.
I know. I just thought of that too.
I think we should.
Is